Business Book Summaries. In the beginning of the laws of human nature, author Robert Greene tells us that this book is all about understanding why people do what they do. He says that when we uncover the secret reasons behind people's actions, we can become better at dealing with others and reaching our own goals. To make his point, Greene looks at what psychologists, philosophers, and famous people have said. He uses their ideas to give us practical advice. He also says that it's important to look inside ourselves and know who we are before we can figure out other people. In other words, self-awareness is the first step in understanding others. Greene says this book is like a tool that can help us know ourselves better and understand the people in our lives. He wants us to keep an open mind as we read and put these ideas into practice. This introduction sets the tone for the whole book. It tells us how vital it is to learn about human nature and shows us a path to do just that.
Before we delve further, remember that we regularly share new content. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel Business Book Summaries and hit the notification bell for the latest updates.
Chapter 1. Controlling Your Feelings, the Law of Irrationality. In the first chapter, Robert Greene talks about how our emotions can sometimes make us act in ways that don't make sense. He says that to control our emotions, we first need to notice when we're acting irrationally. He gives us some useful tips on how to do this, like getting to know ourselves better, trying mindfulness, and changing negative thoughts into positive ones. This chapter also says that it's important to understand how other people feel if we want to have good relationships and be influential. Greene gives examples from history to show how great leaders used their emotions to inspire others and reach their goals. But he also warns us not to let our emotions take over completely, because that can make us act without thinking and do things that harm us. In short, Chapter 1 teaches us a lot about how our emotions affect our behavior and how to handle them better. Chapter 2, From Self-Love to Caring About Others, the Law of Narcissism. Chapter 2 is all about narcissism, which means loving and thinking about yourself too much, according to Robert Greene. He says it's okay to love yourself a bit because it helps you grow and learn. But if you love yourself too much, it can make you see the world in a weird way and push people away. Greene gives us some ways to turn self-love into caring about others. We can do things like being thankful, really listening to what others have to say, and staying curious. This chapter also talks about how to understand why people are so into themselves and how to talk to them without getting hurt. In short, Chapter 2 helps us understand what narcissism is and how we can be more caring and have better relationships with others. Chapter 3. Understanding how people act differently, the law of role-playing. Chapter 3 is all about role-playing, which means people acting differently depending on who they're with or where they are. Robert Greene tells us that if we want to see through their acts, we need to know why they're doing it. He gives us some useful tips for this, like watching how they behave in various situations, paying attention to their body language and what they say, and asking questions that make them open up. This chapter also reminds us that we should understand our own tendencies to act differently in different situations and try to be genuine when we talk to others. Greene warns us not to get too caught up in pretending to be someone we're not, because that can make us lose touch with who we really are. In a nutshell, Chapter 3 teaches us about why people act the way they do and how to have more real relationships with them. Chapter 4. Figuring out how strong someone's character is, the law of compulsive behavior. Chapter 4 is all about compulsive behavior, which means people doing things without really knowing why. Robert Greene says that if we want to understand how strong someone's character is and what they might do in different situations, we need to know why they're acting this way. He gives us some good tips for spotting this behavior, like noticing when people keep doing the same things over and over and how they react when they're stressed or under pressure. This chapter also reminds us to work on our own self-control and discipline so that we don't fall into our own compulsive habits. In short, Chapter 4 helps us understand why people act on impulse and how to have stronger character and better relationships. Chapter 5. How to be someone everyone wants, the law of covetousness. Chapter 5 talks about covetousness, which means people really wanting something that's hard to get. Robert Greene says that if we make ourselves something others desire but can't quite have, we can get more control and influence over them. He gives us some smart tricks for doing this, like creating an air of mystery, making it seem like there's not much of us to go around, and being a bit unpredictable. This chapter also reminds us to understand what other people desire and why, so we can use that knowledge to get them to want what we have. In a nutshell, Chapter 5 teaches us how to make ourselves the one everyone wants and how to gain more power and influence. Chapter 6. Seeing the big picture, the law of short-sightedness. Chapter 6 talks about short-sightedness, which is when people get so focused on short-term goals that they forget about the bigger picture. Robert Greene tells us that looking at the long term and thinking about the future can help us make better decisions and find more meaningful success. He gives us some practical tips for doing this, like finding a sense of purpose and meaning, being interested in many things, and paying attention to the here and now. This chapter also reminds us to understand why other people do what they do and see things from their point of view. That way, we can have better relationships and find more success. In short, Chapter 6 helps us avoid the problems of short-sightedness and gives us advice on how to have a long-term perspective, leading to greater success and happiness. Chapter 7. Making people more open to your ideas, the law of defensiveness. Chapter 7 is all about defensiveness, which means people resist change or new ideas that make them feel uncomfortable. Robert Greene says that if we want others to be more open to what we have to say, we should confirm their self-opinion. He gives us some useful tricks for doing this, like copying how they act and talk, recognizing their strengths and accomplishments, and presenting our ideas in a way that matches their values and beliefs. This chapter also reminds us to be aware of our own defensiveness and to be willing to accept feedback and new ideas from others. In short, Chapter 7 helps us understand why people can be defensive and how to make them more open to our ideas, which can lead to better relationships. Chapter 8. Improve your life by changing your attitude, the law of self-sabotage. Chapter 8 talks about self-sabotage, which is when people mess up their own success because they have negative thoughts and beliefs. Robert Greene says that if we change our attitude, we can change our life for the better and find more success and happiness. He gives us some practical ways to do this, like looking at things in a more positive way, being thankful, and staying hopeful, and thinking that we can grow and get better. This chapter also reminds us to take responsibility for our own actions and make sure we're doing what it takes to be successful. In short, Chapter 8 helps us see how our attitude can affect our life and gives us advice on how to have a better mindset for more success and happiness. Chapter 9. Facing your hidden side, the law of repression. Chapter 9 dives into the idea of repression, which is when people hide their darker feelings and thoughts to keep a positive image of themselves. Robert Greene tells us that if we confront our hidden side, we can learn more about who we are and find greater personal growth and happiness. He gives us some practical ways to do this, like thinking about our actions and who we are, asking others for honest feedback, and accepting that we have weaknesses and flaws. This chapter also reminds us that it's important to acknowledge and understand our hidden feelings and thoughts so that we can feel more complete and real. In short, Chapter 9 helps us see why we hide things from ourselves and gives us advice on how to find personal growth and happiness by facing our hidden side. Chapter 10. Watch out for jealousy, the law of envy. Chapter 10 is all about envy, which is when people feel jealous of others who have things they want. Robert Greene says that if we understand how easy it is for our ego to get hurt, we can avoid the bad effects of envy and find more success and happiness. He gives us some practical ways to deal with envy, like finding our own purpose and meaning in life, focusing on what we're good at and what we've achieved, and being thankful and generous. This chapter also reminds us to understand why other people might be jealous and how we can have better relationships and not become victims of envy. In short, Chapter 10 helps us see how envy can affect us and gives us advice on how to handle it, leading to stronger relationships and personal growth. Chapter 11. Understand Your Boundaries, the Law of Grandiosity. Chapter 11 takes a look at grandiosity, which is when people think too highly of themselves and what they can do. Robert Greene says that if we know and admit our own limits, we can avoid the bad effects of grandiosity and find more success and happiness. He gives us some practical ways to understand our boundaries, like asking for feedback and being honest with ourselves about what we're good at and where we need improvement. He also suggests being humble and open to new ideas. This chapter also reminds us that we should know the limits of others and form teams with people who have different skills and abilities. In short, Chapter 11 helps us see how thinking too highly of ourselves can get in the way and gives us advice on how to be aware of our limits, leading to more success and fulfillment. Chapter 12. Embrace your inner masculine and feminine, the law of gender rigidity. Chapter 12 is all about gender rigidity, which means sticking too strictly to what society expects of men and women. Robert Greene says that if we connect with both the masculine and feminine sides of ourselves, we can find more balance, feel complete, and have better relationships. He gives us some practical ways to do this, like being okay with a wider range of feelings and behaviors, having more empathy and compassion, and not letting old ideas about gender limit us. This chapter also reminds us that it's important to understand how others feel and what they go through. It tells us to create communities that are open and supportive. In short, Chapter 12 helps us see how sticking to old ideas about gender can hold us back and gives us advice on how to be more balanced, whole, and understanding of others. Chapter 13. Move forward with a clear purpose, the law of aimlessness. Chapter 13 looks at aimlessness, which is when people feel like they don't have a clear purpose or direction in their lives. Robert Greene says that if we have a strong sense of purpose and direction, we can be more focused and find more happiness in our lives. He gives us some practical ways to develop a sense of purpose, like figuring out what really matters to us and what we're passionate about, setting goals that we can actually reach, and having a clear idea of where we want to go in the future. This chapter also reminds us that we need to take action and make progress toward our goals to keep our sense of purpose and stay motivated. In short, Chapter 13 helps us understand how feeling lost can hold us back and gives us advice on how to have a clear sense of purpose and direction, which leads to more success and happiness. Chapter 14. Stand out from the crowd, the law of conformity. Chapter 14 talks about conformity, which means people doing what the groups they're in expect them to do. Robert Greene says that if we don't let conformity get to us, we can keep our uniqueness and find more success and happiness. He gives us some practical ways to resist conformity, like knowing who we are and staying true to ourselves, exploring different perspectives and experiences, and sticking up for what we believe in. This chapter also reminds us to create communities that are supportive and accepting of everyone's individuality and differences. In short, Chapter 14 helps us see how following the crowd can sometimes hold us back, and it gives us advice on how to be our unique selves, leading to more success and happiness. Chapter 15. Be someone others want to follow, the law of fickleness. Chapter 15 talks about fickleness, which is when people easily change their minds based on what's happening around them. Robert Greene says that if we understand how people can be fickle, we can find ways to inspire and lead them. He gives us some practical ways to make people want to follow us, like having a strong vision and telling a great story, building trust and good relationships, and knowing what others need and want. This chapter also reminds us that we need to be flexible and change our plans when the situation changes, so we can keep being effective. In short, Chapter 15 helps us see how people can change their minds easily, and it gives us advice on how to be someone that others want to follow. Chapter 16. Spotting hidden aggression, the law of aggression. Chapter 16 delves into aggression, which is when people try to control others in sneaky and subtle ways. Robert Greene says that if we can see the signs of aggression, and understand why people act this way, we can protect ourselves and even prevent it from happening. He gives us some practical ways to deal with aggression, like setting clear boundaries and being assertive, not confronting the person directly, but finding indirect ways to stand up for ourselves, and understanding what's driving others to act this way. This chapter also reminds us to be understanding and kind to others so that we can stop aggression and have better relationships. In short, Chapter 16 helps us see how people can be sneaky and controlling, and it gives us advice on how to protect ourselves and others from this behavior. Chapter 17. Grab the chance to make history, the law of generational myopia. Chapter 17 is all about generational myopia, which is when people don't see how their actions fit into the big picture of history. Robert Greene says that if we understand the broader historical context and the forces at play, we can take advantage of the moment and leave a lasting mark on the world. He gives us some practical ways to seize this historical moment, like studying historical trends and understanding what's happening right now, and taking bold and decisive action. This chapter also reminds us that we need a strong team and supporters to help us make our vision a reality. In short, Chapter 17 helps us see that our actions can be part of something bigger, and it gives us advice on how to make a lasting impact on the world. Chapter 18. Facing the reality of death, the law of death denial. Chapter 18 deals with death denial, which means people avoid thinking about their own mortality. Robert Greene says that if we accept that we're going to die someday and think about it, we can appreciate life more and live in the moment. He gives us some practical ways to meditate on our own mortality, like reflecting on how life is short and fragile, being thankful for the time we have, and understanding that death is a natural part of life. This chapter also reminds us to find meaning and purpose in life, so we can live to the fullest and make a positive impact on the world. In conclusion, Chapter 18 helps us understand why we avoid thinking about death and gives us advice on how to face it, leading to a more meaningful and fulfilled life. Conclusion: the art of understanding human nature. In the conclusion of the laws of human nature, Robert Greene stresses the importance of grasping human nature and how it affects our lives. He argues that by mastering these laws, we can gain a better insight into ourselves and those around us, which ultimately leads to more success and happiness in our personal and professional lives. Greene highlights the significance of empathy, self-awareness, and comprehending the motivations and fears of people in our lives. He emphasizes that self-improvement is an ongoing process, which includes acknowledging our own flaws and limits, as well as seeking purpose in our lives. Finally, he encourages us to view life as a journey of self-discovery and growth, embracing challenges and setbacks as opportunities for learning and development. By continuously striving to understand ourselves and others, we can navigate the intricacies of human nature and lead more fulfilling lives.
We're keen to hear your thoughts on our content. Feel free to share your opinions or recommend books in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel Business Book Summaries and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest summaries. Thank you and have a wonderful day.